Hey,
There we are.
that's it. That's as easy as it is, Peter. I know. There.
Just
It
like
seems
that.
like it seems like magic
Yeah.
every time you watch it. Have you ever watched this?
I've
No.
listened.
The
He's
answer
like,
is
he's
no.
like,
I have
what are we
listened. I have
doing
not
today?
watched, no.
You have
I
a,
don't even know why
you have
I'm
a
here.
what? A
Yeah.
podcast?
Huh?
Sure, I can
It's
talk.
okay.
What's
It's all
happening?
right if you haven't listened, but now
Yeah,
you
it is.
will.
I've listened to a couple episodes.
Now you'll
Yeah.
go back through and listen.
So yeah, that's how it happens. We just press some buttons and then whoa, it's
Perfect.
fun.
Actually, Ken presses buttons
I press buttons.
and I watch.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a thing we have going on.
It's kind of fun. She's like, "Hey, why don't you press that button?" And I'm like, "Okay." And then yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun like that.
How was your weekend,
So
Ken?
here we are. Weekend
Tell
was
me about
not
it. Ken never gives any details. It's great.
It was not paintball. What was this weekend?
I don't know.
Running.
Nope, I didn't run at all this weekend.
Ken apparently
didn't do any
He's
yoga.
a runner now, a triathlete.
Someone runs 3 times in one
th-
week and they're running.
And they're all of a sudden I run 3 times
Wow.
And I was running.
a week.
There's gonna be a lot of
Yeah.
ball busting happening, huh? All
Uh-huh.
right, that's good. I'm good with that.
Hi, Mylise.
Yeah. Oh, it's my lease. Oh, look.
Look
Yeah,
at
I was.
that.
I helped somebody move.
That sounds awful.
It wasn't great. I had to drop Elvis off on Saturday morning at like a little coding thing. You really want me to go through this? It's not really that interesting. I went
If
to
it's
Lodge
not,
on
then no.
Saturday evening.
Oh, that's interesting.
That was great down in Denver.
With Tom.
Yep.
He's still
It's
doing them, huh?
fantastic.
I thought he was going to stop.
No, it's like 25 years.
I know, but I thought he
years.
was over it. He's not direct. I thought he wanted to give up the whole.
Oh no, he's still.
Or
So
is
he
that
goes,
the-
but Eric pours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever done a sweat lodge?
No, I have not.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
hey.
Good times. Oh, we got 3 hearts, one for each of us. Isn't that
Aw.
sweet, Mylise?
And as many as we love you. Yeah, you should do a sweat lodge sometime. We should all go.
Okay.
Sounds like a party.
We did
Yeah.
it. It's been a while now, like
It's probably a year.
almost a year. I
I
mean,
feel like it's been a year.
yeah,
It's
that
good
was
stuff.
some magical times, though.
It was real good.
How was your weekend, Peter?
It was wonderful.
What did you do?
I went down to Boulder. Naropa University had this like breath work and meditation and
Tell us
music.
more.
It was good. I went down there with my girlfriend in Boulder, hung out at the event for a little bit, but we actually ended up driving up the hill and just checking out Boulder and got some Indian food to go and went back home and watched that amazing sunset.
Oh,
on,
on Saturday
was
night.
ridiculous,
That
right?
was
Phenomenal.
so
Probably, like,
cool.
One of the best sunsets I've seen in Colorado.
I
Yeah.
know. There was only like a trillion pictures of it on Facebook.
Only a trillion.
I got out there and I was like, maybe I'll take a picture. And then I'm like, I'm just going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I actually watched the sunset behind the studio.
Yeah. Did you do anything on Saturday? You didn't do anything this weekend, did you?
Nothing.
I didn't think so. You just
Oh
had
my
a
God.
relaxing
This
weekend.
weekend was fucking insane. We did the taco try, which is our 3rd one, and almost 300 athletes. We do it with Cycle Bar. And they do a yoga class, a spin or cycle class, tequila shots, and then they eat a taco. So I'm not a big drinker. My lease does not drink tequila. So we were so very, very sober for the event, which was probably good. We went through 462 shots of tequila.
Wow.
That's a lot of shots of tequila.
14 liters. I did the math because I was like, whoa. It was so fun, though. I mean, it's just like, it's a good way, I think, for people to realize that yoga doesn't always have to be so serious. To just kind of let some of that expectation that you get, just like enjoy it and have fun and laugh. And it's also really hard. Like, it's a 45-minute heated yoga class followed by a 45-minute cycle bar class. That's no
followed
joke.
by tequila.
Well, and not even followed, like preceded by, and in the middle of,
Ugh,
and at
gross.
the end.
Wow.
So people start taking shots like at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's wild. But we had a ton of fun, and I was also really exhausted.
I bet.
Like Saturday night, I was like a zombie.
What did that look like? Can you give us a visual representation?
Like this.
She's got her hands up like a cat and her eyes rolled back in her head.
Like this.
Smiling still,
yeah,
though.
it was. I'm always smiling. It was
Yep.
good. It was good. We talked about 400 for next year, and my lease and I were like, we're gonna need a committee. I
Yeah.
think if we keep growing it, it's gonna end up being like a weekend long event. I'm sure.
So I'd like to introduce our guest.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Peter.
Hello.
Yeah, Peter Bowman.
Yep.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
I'm not
All
sure
right.
how else you could pronounce
I
it.
mean Bowman.
Bowman. Yeah.
Bowman. I mean bow. Yeah.
It's
Same.
funny. People call
sure.
me Peter Noble now because of
Because of your
Because
painting?
you're
everyone just assumes like, hey, it's Peter Noble. Like,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I could see that.
I mean,
You are the owner of Noble Painting Company, but more importantly, a yogi, right? A friend of the studios.
yeah.
Been busting out on the yoga for a while now.
About a year coming
Yeah.
up. It should be a year in February.
All
Or,
right.
like this coming week.
Oh, nice.
So
like,
did
around
you
there.
did you start YogaPod, like yoga at YogaPod?
No. I
Okay.
I was exploring different hobbies to get into, and I actually started at Ascent climbing gym.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And I would I found myself doing more yoga than climbing there.
All right.
Mhm.
Cool.
And so that was good. And then I heard about hot yoga, and so I looked around, and then 2 people had recommended YogaPod. So
Sweet.
Yeah.
Who were those 2 people?
just a couple friends of mine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
He won't give names. He's
No
not.
names.
He's not
I'm not
giving.
I'm not here to name.
He's
He's
not
not giving
here to
out.
name
He's not
drop.
giving out any information that.
Yeah.
How was that
shouldn't be.
first hot class?
Yeah, I want to know what your first impression was of like the studio and the class.
So I had done one hot class with my mom's boyfriend at the time in Minneapolis at Core Power
Mhm.
when I was up there, and it was very. It wasn't like the hot that we do at YogaPod. It was like a hot fitness. It was like very, very difficult, and so when I guess the first hot class at YogaPod was. It was difficult. It was hard to breathe. It was very, very hot, and yeah, but it was really good. Like after that first class, like once you get out, which like I raced out of the room right when it was over, like needing to breathe.
They're like, here's your lavender towel, and
Mhm.
I'll see you.
Yeah, and but then like that feeling you get afterwards, I remember like I was blown away because I kind of forced myself to do everything and not stop, and I felt just amazing afterwards, and so
Yeah.
I was hooked.
Nice. Way better than woodworking.
Way better than woodworking.
I mean,
I'm not
woodworking's got its own kind of, hobby sort of thing, but
never been much of a woodworker, but maybe like whittling.
okay.
you know?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Whittle this from a single piece of beech wood.
Yeah.
You. I say this kindly. I don't mean this in a bad way.
Uh-oh. That's never
I feel
a good
like
way.
it-
Never a good way to start.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like it took you a while to warm up to us. Tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm correct.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my personality is kind of like that. I'm not gonna just when I show up to a new space of just being comfortable around like a new community.
Mm-hmm.
You always got to feel it out. You
Mhm.
know, it's before just jumping in. I just don't think that's just who I am. So
Which
usually I observe
fine, yeah.
and check out everything and then kind of keep to myself and observe and learn and listen.
And then it's all high fives and hugs.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm very, very
Love-
grateful for YogaPod.
I love high fives and hugs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, it's fine. Like, I respect that about people. My husband's the same way. It takes him a long time to like just.
Has he warmed up still to anybody?
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like he's been practicing there. For a long time.
Did he tell you about yesterday morning?
Yes, he taught his first Ashtanga class.
It was awesome.
yesterday.
Right. And afterwards, I came up and gave him a big hug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he like that?
No, not really, but that's okay. He deserved it.
He was expecting
did
a high
awesome.
five.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, dude, you're getting a hug.
I
Perfect.
saw you went. That was really nice of you to support him.
No, that's like
He
the
was
most.
nervous.
I'm sorry. Starting off with a class where you're going to go in
Yeah.
and you're going to sing to everybody.
I know.
Come on.
He chanted. I was like,
no.
I
Chanting's
can't.
dope.
I was
I
like, dude.
know. It was
Yeah,
so
it was
cool.
rad.
I've recently started chanting, and
It's
That's great.
neat.
It's yeah,
There's a lot of power behind chanting.
For
there
sure.
is.
I've been reading a little bit about it recently.
Just the vibration and like it really like opens you up a lot more than just sitting there meditating
Yeah.
and breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and how there's specific sounds for certain things. Like if you want to call something in, like there's set chants for that. And I'm like, well, who who decides? That's what I always wonder. Who sat down and decided that like Om was the sound of God or whatever. But
It makes sense, though,
it does
right?
make sense. I think if you
Like
just
cellularly, it makes sense.
maybe Peter knows because
Maybe he does.
Peter's a musician,
Oh
which
yeah.
I want to talk about a little bit because musicians are amazing. But maybe you know something about like the vibratory aspect of a chant, or I don't know, like, do you know anything about that?
I do not. I'm like I've just been learning. So yeah, I was never actually. It was like it's funny. Like I got into Kundalini before I started going to YogaPod, and I would just do like every morning with my meditation. I would do like these 4 Kundalini moves, but I always like there's a lot of chanting
Mm-hmm.
in Kundalini, but I always left it out because it made me feel goofy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was just like,
Yeah.
man, this is
No.
ridiculous.
Especially
I'm
like
not.
out loud in your house.
Yeah, totally. And I just was like not comfortable doing it. But just recently, my girlfriend actually introduced me to a lot of the chanting, and I've just been doing it, and it's like it's helped me pull myself out of my comfort zone, which is good. But yeah, as a musician, I don't know what the actual benefits are, but especially when because I'll kind of like try and send the vibrations to different parts of my body,
Mm-hmm.
but I have been noticing with the throat, it really helps just open it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So fascinating. We should have Lisa back on, doesn't
Totally.
she? So
Oh yeah.
you should listen if you have the chance to this episode with Lisa
Fear.
But she does a lot of chanting, and I think that would be really cool.
She's rad.
It's interesting. There's a lot of practices out there that are fun to explore.
Yes, they
I
are.
think.
So many. Yeah. It's
Let's
like,
talk about practices that are fun to explore.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, going to Peru.
yeah.
That's a whole
That's a big practice.
That's a
right
whole
now.
practice,
It's
right?
a whole thing.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I think first we should talk a little bit about Kundalini Yoga,
Yeah, let's do it.
which I don't know a ton about Kundalini Yoga. I've only done it a couple times, but the few times I've done it, I mean, you're like on the 9th planet. I think there's a lot of breath work. So a lot of
Yeah.
pranayama, a lot of breathing. Like
Mhm.
Peter said, a lot of chanting if you choose to chant. It's like really core oriented. I feel like there's a lot of like intense core work.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You know, I'm always like really sore there. Probably from all the pranayama.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you tell us about your experience with Kundalini?
So I'm no pro. It was introduced to me like someone showed me a DVD.
Mm-hmm.
It was and it was
Red
the only
movie?
thing I've ever done is the like awakening part of like the morning routine, and don't even do all of that. I kind of took a few moves that I like and started doing them. But essentially, I started doing it just to awaken the Kundalini energy, to have more energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the reason I got into it. But again, I'm no pro. Like I watched a DVD once and kind of just like made it my own thing and kind of just incorporated it into my morning practice. And I found like now, like going back, I guess it's been like probably like a year and a half, 2 years I've been doing it. And like with consistency, I'm not sure because like sometimes I'll do something a lot and sometimes I'll
Mm-hmm.
move back from it and kind of but what I found is that when I do sit down and do that 15 minutes in the morning of like waking my spine up, because they say all the energy generates from like the base of the spine, the root chakra. And so when I do that, I always feel like I've connected my body more.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel more energy. So
Yeah.
Cool.
So Kundalini Yoga is the yoga practice of the Sikh religion. So we had Gigi on. She
Mhm.
was another episode that she grew up doing Kundalini Yoga from the time she was like, well, born. I'm sure they were taking her to the ashram in the morning. And then, are you hungry?
I don't know what's going on with my
Ken's-
stomach, but it's making some
Ken's
interesting noises
stomach.
right now.
You
Hopefully
should
they
put
can
a
hear that.
microphone down there. Maybe it's telling us some.
Mm-hmm.
So so she would do it like every morning, and then I think she like pulled away from it for a while. It was brought over here by Yogi Bhajan and
Mm-hmm.
started kind of like in LA, I think, where a lot of like the yoga trends hit. But something that I think is interesting is when you talk about Kundalini energy, you're talking about that energy that runs from kind of the base, like the root chakra, through the crown chakra along the spine. Um, and any yoga practice can be a Kundalini practice just because that energy is present always. And so Kundalini yoga is interesting to me, because I think they've taken a concept and like then created something else. Not that it's different or bad or whatever, but I think you can pull in aspects of Kundalini yoga, like basically into everything, like into your hot class or whatever it may be.
Well, they do the breath of fire.
Yeah.
They do this
The
one.
and they call it yeah, they do call it breath of fire. With the lips sealed. So you breathe in and out through the nose with the lips sealed. Whereas in hot, you breathe in and out through the nose, or in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Yep.
But that breath work is some powerful stuff.
It really is.
For sure.
Really powerful. So we're doing a Kundalini event for members at the studio soon. I'm excited. Couple hours of yoga with Gigi. Definitely something to check out. But a practice that I think is people are curious about.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we know a lot about it.
No, there's not many studios that offer it
There's
like
not.
fully in depth in
Yeah.
Colorado. So
There's not. Maybe you should get a Kundalini yoga certification and teach it.
yeah, I've actually I've been thinking about going out to India at some point. Um, my girlfriend and I have been talking about it, of going out there for like a month or so and doing some type of teacher training out there.
Ooh.
Cool.
Let me hook you up. I have a friend out there who has a
Perfect.
yoga school in Rishikesh, which is in between the Himalayas, or there they call it the Himalayas, and the Ganga, which we call it the Ganges, like Americans. But Rishikesh is Holy Land. It's like kind of the last, like, I mean, they don't have running water or like plumbing, So, but that's where
It's
there's
a little more primitive.
Yeah, more primitive. There's a ton of ashrams there and yoga
Cool.
schools and all that.
Why
good
would
stuff.
he come back?
Because it's India. Seriously,
We have
it's
it
tough
super
to
easy
live.
out
Yeah.
here.
It's
Very,
tough
very
to
easy.
live there. My best friend moved there because she went to training in Rishikesh, and she fell in love and got married, had a baby, and so she lives there like most of the year. And
Cool.
it's really tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Real different.
Totally different. And speaking of travel, yeah, I want to hear about Peru.
Wow. That was an awesome segue.
Speaking of
My
India,
Transitions are
goodness.
good.
I do want to hear about Peru though. So Peter just went for a month.
Yep.
Is that right? And I know you weren't just doing one thing the whole time you were there. But I want to hear about it if you want to share.
Yeah, it was let's see. So I wanted to, so my work is seasonal, and so usually December slows down enough to where I could take a little bit of time off, and I've been wanting to travel, and I've been putting off world travel for a lot of years, and I finally was at a point where I decided to go down to Peru, and I was sitting I originally booked it for an ayahuasca retreat. And so I went out there to the jungle. And so I spent 2 weeks in Iquitos. Well, so we flew into Iquitos. I spent a couple days in Lima. When I got there, just getting in the flow of traveling. And Lima was really cool. I mean, it's a huge city, but I wasn't too. It was good to get into the jungle, I should say.
Well, and it's the altitude there is really insane, right?
No,
Not
Lima's
in
on the
Lima?
coast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a coastal city. And then yeah, so I had that scheduled, and it was 2 weeks. So we flew into Iquitos, and we took a 2-hour cab ride.
Who's we?
just the whole people from retreat. We met at this cafe,
Okay.
Cool.
and so everyone met up. We all got to know each other, and then we took a couple cabs to a town called Nauta, and
Mhm.
then from there we took a little motor taxi to the edge of the town, about 30 minutes, and then we got let out, and everyone had their bags, and we hike about 20-30 minutes into the jungle where they had this the retreat center, and it was a very, very basic one.
Yeah.
It was kind of, they did the traditional type way, so there was a dieta that you did as well, so it was no sugar, no spices, anything like that. So we got a bowl of porridge in the morning, and we all had our own little tombos. So it was
What's Tomba?
a hut.
Okay.
Yeah, so they had the main area, and there was no um hooked up electricity. They had solar in on some of the stuff, but overall everything was by candlelight.
It wasn't your 5-star
No,
Rhythmia retreat in Costa Rica.
it was not. No,
Yeah.
no. There was like a shared toilet in the middle of the jungle, and
Which is where my lease and I want to go.
yeah.
Well, we want to go to Costa Rica. We have this joke at the studio that we're going to run ayahuasca retreats out of the mechanical room in the back hall and charge $39.99
Yeah.
Hmm.
Sounds like you're gonna get a lot of people.
and serve unlimited Taco Bell.
Yeah.
It's a bad joke. It's a
Perfect.
bad joke.
Hmm.
But
You might need to think that one through.
I do think I would do better at a night like a I don't know.
A nicer place.
I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with
Well,
roughing it, but I don't know about the combo of the ayahuasca with the accommodations.
so
Well,
that's
let's hear about it.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
that was what was really cool about it. For me personally, cause so you have the dieta, so you also so it's they don't recommend that you talk to anybody, go into
Mm.
town during the 2 weeks. So it's actually like it's kind of like a silent retreat as well. Like
Mm.
you can talk to some of the other um participants there, and but overall, and they kind of recommend it like before and after the ceremony to, like, if anyone's nervous or just talking about your
Debrief.
experience. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. But for the most part during the day, and this is why I liked it, and I know there's a lot of them because I was looking at the Rhythmia where you have
Yeah.
like coaches and
And
stuff like
vegan
that.
chefs and
Yeah, and this was all vegan food. It was so it was a bowl of porridge in the morning, and then it was 2 meals a day, and then the or dinner, which was like around like 2 or 3 o'clock, would be like beans, rice, like beets, carrots. It was
Mhm.
very, very simple. Got a hard boiled egg one day, and it was the best day ever.
Ooh.
Yeah. But so the owner of the retreat, Blas, he was very, very cool. He had his girlfriend and his little daughter there. I've never seen like this girl being raised out there. She was like about 2 years old, like a year and a half, but she was so calm in that natural rhythm
Oh
of
yeah,
how
I'm
it is out
sure.
there.
Mm-hmm.
But his whole thing is like, hey, I'm here to talk if you guys need to talk at all, but why don't you just let the medicine show you? And it's like spend time with yourself in silent and like reflect on it, versus like his whole thing was when you talk to other people, you'll be kind of subjective to whatever they say,
Sure.
and you'll try to latch on that for an
Yeah.
answer,
Yeah.
versus we have all the answers inside of us.
Right.
If you just let go, they will show up.
Sure.
So does he consider himself like a shaman or no?
He's not a shaman. He's he considers himself the facilitator.
Okay.
He's been doing it for 5 years out there. He came from
Nice.
Poland,
Mhm.
and yeah, so facilitator.
cool.
There's 3 shamans out there. It was a father, his wife, and his son.
Nice.
And so
That's so true though. I mean, I feel like the brain's always trying to make sense or like complete the puzzle, and we look to other people for answers, or if you're not sure about something. I mean, you just think about Facebook, how many times people are like, hey, what's your opinion on this, just so it can validate their own opinion, or something like that. And I never really thought about that, I guess, in terms of not talking or like conversing with other people while you're there. But it does make sense,
Sure.
especially when you're in that state, like you're in that heightened state where you're just really open, I think, or as Ken would say, in ceremony.
yeah, well, and so
Sure.
the way they had it laid out is, so you get there and everyone like you have one day of like integration, and everyone introduces themselves and they kind of explain the process, and you have the first ceremony the next night, and then there's 2 days off between the ceremonies, so there's 4 total in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So you have time to integrate in between.
Yeah.
And so
How nervous were you before the first one?
so nervous.
Oh man,
like
I would
so
be like,
nervous.
oh.
And especially because I I've been sober for 2.5 years, so I was very on the fence of like I've been on a spiritual path where just doing the meditation, the breath
Mhm.
work, like the self-examination. I was at a point before I left where I kind of had this awakening where I was just in gratitude and just like full surrender of where my life was, and I was like, do I really need
It's
to do
gonna mess
this?
it
Like,
up.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It was so but at that point it was more, I made the decision just because of the experience, and solely for
Mhm.
experience. I went there with no expectations. I didn't want to be seeking for anything. It was just solely the experience, and I'm very
Mm.
grateful I went in with that mentality. Um, and I'm very grateful for all the work I had been doing before,
Yeah.
because there were some people who were just there, and you could tell they were just there to seek and
Mm.
looking for answers. And it's like, I feel when you rely upon something outside of yourself,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's like
Becomes problematic.
sidestepping the real process of like
Yeah.
being okay with yourself. Like,
Right.
I'm not there
Mhm.
to use this to heal myself. Like, I'm there to experience, and whatever shows up is what shows
Right.
up.
Sure.
It's another step on the journey.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can imagine people, they're going through a divorce or whatever and deciding like just to go out and find answers, which I'm sure they do. And I'm sure there's value in that too.
Sure.
But I know a lot of the places that do these, um, they ask you to prepare,
Hmm.
like on the front end. They ask you to like kind of change your diet and meditate and like start to prepare yourself a little bit for the experience. So, do you feel like you were prepared for what you encountered that first night?
Yeah, I the diet, I wasn't prepared as
That
much,
would be
but
so hard.
yeah, it was
2
like,
meals a day, I would go insane.
it was actually it was kind of nice, because really during the day too, like you have a little hammock in your tambo, a
Mhm.
mat. Like the days are slow. Like you get into a rhythm because the sun rises at 6 and sets at 6. Like
Mhm.
it's a natural rhythm.
Sure.
And
Did you do yoga while you were there?
I actually taught hot pretty much
You
every day.
did?
Yeah. I had a couple.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
there was a
You
couple
had
of
a
friends I
following.
made out there, and yeah, they would
Oh,
just
that's
show up,
so
little soldiers
neat.
ready to do yoga, because I was just doing it. And
That's
then yeah,
cool.
so it was the only time I've ever taught it, but I was doing it at the same time too. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
totally. You're
Yeah.
just
I
like,
definitely left some
watch
things
me
out here
and
and there,
learn.
but yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
that's neat.
Nice.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was good. So yeah, but overall, I mean, like, and then just being in the jungle, it was
Mm.
the beginning of the rainy season,
Mhm.
and just like at night when you're just like laying in the hut at night with the candles burning, and then these storms would pass. Like,
Mm.
and there's like this chaotic order that it gets so loud at night.
Yeah.
And I probably learned more from the jungle than I did actually like the whole experience. Like, I
Hmm.
learned, or just as much, from just the environment
Yeah.
there,
Mhm.
of like settling into a rhythm. Like the first couple days were
It's
not
hard.
easy. I was like,
Yeah.
you're there by yourself, and I'm like, what am I fucking doing here? This is da da da,
Mhm.
and it's like I'm
Sure.
bored. This boredom sets in, and like after like the third day, you finally like kind of surrender, because I'm so used to doing stuff all the time,
Yep.
Sure.
and then just to take that time just to like, what, I'm just gonna swing in the hammock right
Let's
now.
check out.
Well,
Yeah.
that is such a good point. Like that's our natural state. I truly believe that.
Oh yeah.
That we are meant to cycle with the cycles of the earth, the moon, the planets, all of that. And is that too woo woo for you, Ken?
No,
That's
not at
good.
all. I said, oh yeah.
Yeah, all right. But
Yeah.
I think that's our natural rhythm, is to like take it slow, to just
Hmm.
kind of move through life. And
You and I are super good at that too.
oh yeah, totally.
Got it nailed.
Just ran
I'm
3 times
terrible.
last week.
See my to-do list.
I'm terrible at it, but
Being.
I had a rough December and January,
Mhm.
and I started doing some acupuncture. And the very first session that I did, um, she put everything in. She left me, and I cried, first of all, which was like so just involuntary. But then for the entire hour that I was just laying there, I was imagining being on an inner tube, floating a lazy river, like somewhere in Colorado or wherever, but I was like in a canyon river with like high canyon walls, and there was like trees on the top,
Mm-hmm.
and the colors were really vivid, and it was like sunny but not too sunny because I sunburn really easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I just that's all I did for like an hour on this table. And
Nice.
when she came back, I was like, I need to rest. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
need to slow down. It was
Sure.
like such a sign to me that I was just like going, going, going. And it's, that's why I think it's so important to like check out for like an extended period of time, like 4 or 5 days. Cause
Yeah.
those first few days, you just are so in that
It's a reset.
chaotic mindset. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was definitely like a big insight I had of, I mean, I used to go out to nature a lot more, and it's
Yeah.
crazy, like living in Fort Collins,
I
like how much I
know.
don't take advantage of
I
like
know.
like going outside. But it was definitely like very obvious that my body, and like just for like creativity, just to
Yeah.
unplug and just not have an agenda and be out in nature, it's like I need to do that. Like I always can't
Often.
like quarterly, yeah, like at
Yeah.
least like a week of just camping or whatever it is, like
Yes.
whatever it may be. But I
Sure.
think a week's
Making
the
that a
per
priority. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
definitely, because like I felt a lot more recharged when I came back. Um,
Ken, you spend a lot of time doing
I do.
weird shit in nature, don't
I
you?
do. I mean, I don't know how weird it is.
I think weird is good. I
It's
say
pretty
weird as
weird.
a compliment.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. Yeah, I mean, and I think it's for me, I've had those every time I have those experiences, I come back and I'm like, I need to do more of that.
Yeah, like
Right? Like
what am I doing?
I'm like, regardless of the outcome or even the circumstances of it, it was like exactly what I needed,
Yeah.
and like I'm not willing to compromise. Like I'm starting to realize, I think at 47 years old, like the things that I'm willing to compromise and the things that I'm not willing to compromise. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not willing to compromise those things.
Yeah.
Like I need to be, I probably spend 4 weeks a year living outdoors.
yeah, it's
And
good.
it's like, I wish I could do it more,
I know. That's how
you
I
know?
felt when we went to Costa Rica, and something about seeing those places that you've never seen and the jungle.
Yeah. Like there was a certain
Dude.
point where it definitely crossed my mind where like I could just live like
You're like,
I
this.
I
could
don't
Like
just
I
need
don't
to.
need
You're
to come
like,
back.
disappear. I could just
sell the house
disappear.
I
and
know. I
boom,
was
we're
like,
done.
yeah,
Check
Well, and
out.
the thing that's really fascinating about the jungle is that it shows you that if given the time to rest, everything will reproduce.
well, and that's the thing. It shows you how fast,
Yes.
like it'll
How
just keep
fast you can
growing. You can,
recover.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of wild. Like they had
Mhm.
said, like this property they had there, they got these 24 acres, um, and they said it was all cut down in the 50s.
Yeah,
And like standing in it, you would have no
I
clue
know.
it was cut down
It's
at
Wow.
one
it's
point. It was
crazy.
just so thick, and
It
yeah.
gives you hope for
Yeah.
the planet for sure. There's this place my lease and I want to go to called the Mashpee Lodge in Ecuador, and this guy bought hundreds of acres of jungle rainforest like in the 60s because he saw that it was going to be like logged and all of these things, and he built this really cool lodge there. And he said like they have to like beat back the path to the lodge like every day,
Yeah.
or the jungle will literally just swallow
Take it
the
back.
whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
It
I
was
love that.
definitely, yeah, it was helpful to reflect on stuff like that out there. And like the biggest thing, like the storms, it was like
Mm.
watching the storms pass, it was just like it reminded me a lot of like my emotions, that like things will
Mm,
come up, and like
Yeah.
if I don't hold on to it, it'll just, there's a natural rhythm, it'll
just
It's a
move
great
rolls
on.
observation.
past.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
So
it's
what
definitely
was that?
helpful.
What were the ceremonies like for you?
Well, they were different. Like each one was different. The first one, like and they talk about it this way. Like the first one, it was like, I guess, very cerebral.
Mm,
Um, it wasn't very very intense. I think just your body is like figuring out, like like what is this, and
mm-hmm.
it like to fully surrender to it at that point. I don't think is possible for like someone doing it for the first time. but it was very cerebral. Like the first one, it was good. I just ran through, essentially, I ran through like a list. I was just filled with gratitude and love of just like these people from my life back home and people I grew up with, my family, were just popping in my head. And I was just so grateful for the life that I lived and that I
Mm-hmm.
live. And so that one was really, really good. Ceremony 2 was again very, very good, kind of continuing on that gratitude. And there was a certain like that one I felt so good. I actually like saw like kind of the first album artwork I want to do, and I just kept
Ooh.
seeing the house I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. On this corner, I like saw it in these colors. I've never seen it before, and it was good. I thought about like an old friend, brother who I hadn't thought about for a while, who passed away when I was younger, and it was very good. And then
Hmm.
I sat out in the like, so you're all in this Maloka, like the main
Mm-hmm.
hut, and
Yeah.
everyone's in there and stays the
Yeah.
night there. And I went out and I just sat in the like the second night I went out there, and there's all these mosquitoes. So I was like,
Mm.
I gotta go see if I, go to the bathroom and see if I have to throw up or something. And so I stood out there and I didn't want to do it because I was like, I don't want to deal with the mosquitoes. And so I
Yeah.
sat there kind
I
of
don't
back and
either.
forth for a little bit. But I went out there and all of a sudden I was like standing out there and I was like, there's no mosquitoes. And it was like I was in harmony with the jungle. And then
Yeah.
like I went out and sat on this log and I like feeling like Tarzan. I just felt like so in tune and with it. And like I was like flapping my shirt at the bats going around.
Yes.
I was loving it. Well, and then this rainstorm came in, and I was like sitting out there for an hour, but then this big rainstorm came in, and then like so it pulled me back to the Maloka, and there was a, a guy who became a good friend of mine who just sat there and talked, and it was like, and then a couple people would pop by, we drinking like hot tea, and it was just like it was cool, like the weather, like
Brought people together.
yeah, it brought connection. It was
I love storms. Oh man.
yeah, but then 3 and 4. So like I knew like it was so funny. I was sitting out there. And I was like, man, this is great. But there was like this ominous like storm,
Mm.
like lightning storm cloud, and I was like,
Mhm.
all right, like something's
Something's
coming.
coming.
And
Dun
so
dun dun
Whoop,
dun.
whoop.
yeah, and so yeah, so then I actually, so you're not supposed to use your phone,
Mm.
but midway through, I decided to use my phone and broke the dieta. But I got some like very intense news. Like
Oh
something told, like I just
no.
knew I had to, and
Mm.
like so I got very very intense news, and 3 and 4 were
Mm.
intense. They were dark.
Mm.
Like I think collectively, and I was very curious about this of like when you're in something like that, like how much the collective consciousness of people, how much it's
Mhm.
subjective to the people around you.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it was intense. Like 3 and 4 were very, very dark.
It's kind of that nature versus nurture concept, right? Like how much is everything in our lives influencing us, or what kind of influence does the environment we're in have on our ability to control emotions, right? Or to ability to like process emotion effectively. And so yeah, I wonder like if it's better to go through the entire experience completely isolated, or to like let a little bit of that in and kind of try to process real life in that situation. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's just like group dynamics. I think when you're ever with the group, and I think the not talking helps a bit, but
Mm,
like eventually you
you
get to
gotta
know the
talk,
people
yeah.
around you. Like there'd be times, but where we would just chat, like, everyone would be in the Maloka during the day, just chatting for a little bit. But like little bits, little bite-sized pieces of it, I think is good just to like touch base with other people who are in this experience.
Yeah.
But
Do you think anything had to do with like the amount that they were giving you?
well, and so that
Oh
was the thing. I went in
yeah.
there,
Do
so
they increase it?
it's no, they don't. It's like
Okay.
actually people were like throughout the time going down in dose.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they would like see what was comfortable. Like they start out, you get a half cup the first night, and then they like one cup is like a dose.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
And that was my rule. It's like one dude, one cup. Like that's all
yeah.
I need. I'm just doing it like
Mm-hmm.
that. And
You get 1 cup for the whole thing.
yeah, one cup for the
Okay.
whole thing.
Got it.
Oh, it's so bad. It's
Yeah,
the
it
taste.
tastes terrible.
Yeah. But
That's what I'm like afraid of, the getting sick part.
That I think that's like, so the way I saw that, like you just like,
You get rid of what you need to.
it's just like 20 minutes. You're just like, just breathe through it. Like that was a big thing they said. Like if you get like stuck in like a loop, just like sit up and breathe. But
Mm,
overall, like I mean, like now going back to 3 and 4, like where they were dark, it it shined light on things that I thought I had dealt with, and then I kind of just shut the door on and not
yeah.
examined in my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So overall, really, like with the experience, like the experience was kind of very intense, but um in the end, I'm more than grateful for the things that were brought to my attention.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which is a neat concept. I mean, I think if you can enter any experience with just the idea that, like, this isn't happening to me, like, I'm just here observing this experience, this is just part of what's going on around me, it's easier to process it or to see, like, how on the other side of that there might be something beneficial that comes from it, or you just know or trust that even though it's hard, um, there's purpose and
Yeah, I'm a
joy.
firm,
It's the non-attachment, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a firm
Real
believer
hard.
that like pain is the cornerstone to growth. So it's like these
Yeah.
discomforts where, I've done so much work on myself. Like at first it was very painful, but these days, like a discomfort, um, just the awareness to it, like pain shows us exactly what we need to address in our lives. Mm,
Yeah. And even learning to transmute it into something that's not pain,
right,
right? Like not letting it be, like not labeling it as pain. Like it's just, if you think about it physically, like there is a way that you can physically, through like breath work and meditation, turn a pain, like a physical pain, into just a sensation.
right.
And it's the same concept, and it's part of the Yoga Sutras actually, is to learn to transmute things into, like, without a label, that it's not labeled as discomfort or pain or whatever, it's a thing,
Just
Yeah.
is,
it's
yeah.
just something. um, and it's a concept that I think is really difficult, especially in the moment, like when, especially if it's like a sudden thing or something that upsets you, to remember that. But I think with anything, like the more you practice, the more you have those types of experiences that open your eyes to that, it does become easier to
Hmm.
change your label of it.
Yeah, well, it's just not attaching to it. Like, just because it arises doesn't mean I have to like, because like the more I resist it, the more it shows up as real. Because now I'm like defining it, like you said. But
Yeah.
Sure.
And as soon
um,
as you define
Putting it,
it,
yeah, you're putting a label
it's
on it, and
nothing.
yep.
yeah, but discomfort happens, and
Yes.
it's like the storms. If I acknowledge it that this is here, then it actually dissipates.
Yeah.
Versus like if I'm like looking at it as a problem,
Mm-hmm.
then I mean,
Then
like
that's a
now it's just like a
problem.
normal part of growth. It's like, oh, this is here. Look at, then I can do that. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the plan of action, and next thing you know, you're out of it. And so, yeah, the awareness I
Yeah.
think is the yeah,
Well, and there's two different concepts working there. There's the concept of the fact that emotion is energy, and it needs to, like, physically and energetically, like, move through the
hmm
body, because we know practicing yoga, like, it gets stuck in certain places, or energetically it gets stuck in your chakras and
hmm
blocks you. Um, and then we're talking about the concept of, like, not letting, like, understanding that emotions are not your true self, right? Like
Yeah.
who's experiencing that emotion? Well, who's that person? Like, who am I really at the core? And emotions are not, emotions are matter, they're prakriti, they're not part of the consciousness or the purusha of your being. And so there there's the concept of, like, needing to recognize the emotion and let it, like, energetically move through you, but also understanding that's not who you are.
right. Doesn't define you.
Yeah, and letting that go,
Which,
which is so hard to do.
what a way to confuse yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So hard
it's
to
the
do.
paradox. All of it's a paradox.
I
It
know.
Right?
really is, and I think
Just when you think you know,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's
you
like
don't know.
yeah, if you think you know, just surrender again. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just
you
like I
don't.
think it's a constant state of realizing that I can trust whatever's been expanding this universe out for 13.8 billion years. I can trust that creative intelligence to
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
also guide me in my life. And if I take the time to go through, and sometimes I got to breathe into each energy center and surrender that, like on a molecular level. That's how I've envisioned it. And
Mm-hmm.
I know when I do that, it lightens me up because if I live in the unknown, like it, from my experience, and this is where belief comes from, I believe, is like through experience of me doing these things, which at first you hear it and you're like, yeah, that's cool, but it works for you. You know, like my reality is
Mhm.
different. This is my reality. Like, and we get stuck in that. And I think as I've been going through, like I'll just surrender it over, and then my days, it's stranger than fiction. Like, I mean, it's just
Mhm.
like your life just augments
Yeah.
perfectly tailored to you, and then all of a sudden I believe it more, and it's like kind of like an exponential curve. Eventually I get to a place where I can rely upon that. Like, I don't need to
Mm,
figure this out. I am
sure.
guided, so I
Yeah.
can just turn it over, and I can
Mm-hmm.
have my intentions, but really it's like overall what I shoot for these days is it's a state of gratitude, of joy and excitement for the things that I do in connection with people, and ways to be of service to people, and that
Mhm.
starts with being of service to myself, to do all these things to make sure that I'm in the correct mind state to actually be useful in the world and not
Yeah.
be like self-obsessed, because when I'm trying to figure out my life, that's all I'm thinking about is my
Yeah.
life.
And you're
Sure.
trying to control everything. And that's yoga at the heart of everything. Like yoga is about compassion. It's all compassion, and compassion for yourself and compassion for other people and the planet. And Marianne Williamson, she's an author. She wrote a book called The Return to Love, and she has a book called A Course in Miracles, which I highly recommend both. But she wakes up every morning and she says, "Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom?" And she just like, and that's how her day goes. And she's phenomenal. Like, she just was running for president in the Democratic Party and didn't quite make it all the way, but I think made some waves in the political system, which was cool. But yeah, I think what I'm trying to do as a parent, which leads into a question for you, is like, how do we teach our kids, right? Like, these concepts are something that I've been figuring out in my 30s.
Mm,
And I'm like, man, where were these concepts when we're struggling with all the stupid crap kids struggle with?
mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out how to teach them to my kids in a way where they're not like, wow, mom's absolutely off her rocker. And then they grow up being like, when I was 6 and I was mad about my toy getting stolen, my mom would tell me some woo woo BS. But
Well, I think we're at a age now where we know it's like science is starting to back this stuff up.
yes.
It's not
Mm-hmm.
woo woo anymore. I think I don't know. I don't have any children, but I think about that of like how would, because you know, I feel like it's a generational thing. Like our parents didn't know any of this. They were coming off another generation. Like, you know, we weren't that far away from like these like kind of like old beliefs. But this stuff has been around for millennia. You know, it's
Yeah.
not old. It's just, I guess, kind of been forgotten in the Western world, where our logical brain is like
Well, I mean, a lot of it is technologically based, right? Like, I mean, so much of it is like we're just removing ourselves from ourselves, right? We're making this like
Mm-hmm.
virtual reality of what life really is.
mm,
We're living indoors with shoes on and
That's the shoes.
clothes
Yeah.
and, like all of the
Well,
like
that's shoes.
sheltering ourselves from
Mm-hmm.
everything, right?
Right. We're
And
so
then at the same
disconnected.
time exposing ourselves to everything, like anything that you could imagine is on that little box right there,
well, I
right?
think a lot of
Good
it,
and bad,
yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot
right?
of it's all like emotional right now. Like we're actually not, we put ourselves in stressful situations, but we're actually not in danger. We create the
Oh yeah,
scenario to cause the
Mm-hmm.
stress in our
sure.
lives versus, you know, back when there was actually issues you had to
Oh yeah.
watch out for as a human
Mm-hmm.
to survive, and that's
Sure.
that survival part
Right.
of our
We
brain is
still got the
still.
reptilian thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but going back to, I think, how to teach it, I think it's action. Actions speak louder than words. Like you have to be doing anything that you expect
Mm-hmm.
anyone. That's your children, your partner, like
Mm-hmm.
friends. Like if you're gonna ask someone to do something, you better have those traits in yourself if you're expecting another person to do it. And I think
Mm,
that's the strongest way to teach, because then people are seeing you, they see the benefits and change in you, versus
Mm-hmm.
sure.
if you tell someone to do something, most people like it repulses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'll push back. There's like
Yeah.
it's a natural reaction to that, and I think trusting that we don't know like all the time,
Yeah.
Right.
and like you have to, especially with children, like allow them to have their own experience,
Yes.
you know,
They
to come
need
up with their
to.
beliefs. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just like that's where the guidance comes in, where it's like
Yeah.
you know, just little bits of knowledge you're sprinkling, you know,
I
just like
know.
little
I
bits here
try.
and there, and allowing them to make the mistakes, because that's what life is. We make
Sure.
mistakes and adjust. Like, oh wow, look at that, that didn't work, or this did work. Let's, you know, let's do it that way.
Yeah, the human capacity to adapt has always been really so interesting to me. Even with just like little things, like my brother-in-law's TV broke and like the power button or something, and so he figured out a way to turn it on with the blow dryer. Like by holding it on the side of the TV, and I'm like, we adapt. That's what we do, is we as humans, we adapt. And but yeah, I mean, I think back to my childhood. I was raised incredibly religious,
Mm.
which I never connected with really. Like it never gave me that, gave me a solid foundation, I think, for like morals and kind of like guidelines, but it never excited me. Like I was never really interested in diving deep into that, and discovering it later, like really through yoga and meditation. I mean, it's a lifelong journey, obviously, of discovery. But what, like, briefly, because we don't have a ton of time, but what was your childhood like? Like, how do you think you ended up here now at this point, sober and, you know, seeking out experience and all of these things?
Um, I my childhood was great. I have two amazing parents. Um, my mother and my father, did like they did the work to raise us. I mean, I was a I was definitely not the best kid, you know.
Oh,
Like I grew up fast. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. It was like,
mm,
again, there was all the love was there. Um, but again, I think it's a generational thing where like teaching these things, um, there just wasn't, like, the information wasn't there. Like we didn't grow up any religious at all. But you know, there's always kind of, we always believed in something, you know, like the universe or whatever it was, but we weren't like
mm-hmm,
labeling it anything at that point. Um, but yeah, I mean, my childhood growing up, like I had difficulty with school. Like, I mean, I consider myself a pretty intelligent person, but the structure of the school just
mm-hmm,
did not do it for me. And I think, you know, it was I look back now, and like the language I was speaking to myself of like, you know, I can't do this, or this is
mm-hmm.
too, you know what I mean? I was saying that a lot. And so like I just would stop trying, for a lot of things. And yeah, I kind of started getting into a lot of trouble as a
Yeah,
kid. You know, I was
yeah.
in and out of the system at a very young age. And yeah, I did it like, I got into a lot of drugs at a young age. And so it was, I grew up very fast. And um, yeah, but overall, like my parents raised me to the best ability they possibly could have. They cared.
Mm-hmm.
They were always, you know, worried, you know, because there was a lot to be worried about me back then.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm very, very grateful that I'm here today.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are too.
And how did you end up getting out of that loop? Like what was it that what was the, like, the straw that broke the camel's back?
Well, there's a couple straws and a couple different loops, but
And you don't have to go into great detail.
Oh,
I
yeah,
he's
mean,
going.
you know,
He's
yeah.
but
diving deep,
I
Ed.
would like, yeah, if we have time, but you
yeah.
know, it's like, you know, I was in a lot of trouble in Tucson, like opiates were my thing. And so I had a really bad problem with that. And then I knew I had to get out of there. And, you know, it was about 6 years where I was really, it was a rough life, like very rough life of like it was grimy.
You're just a
And
junkie.
yeah,
Yeah.
essentially. And like I was like selling drugs, and like, you know, I was, like I said, I was getting arrested like all the time. I was starting to go to jail a lot. And then I almost lost my life twice, and I knew I had to go. Like
From ODN.
I woke up in the hospital one time, and then um someone tried to rob me, like, because I was selling drugs. And they tried to rob me, and they stuck a pistol in my face, and like, I got pistol whipped, and the gun went off over my head. Like,
No.
yeah, I was bleeding, and
Whoa.
like spilled. It was on the U of A campus at like 11 a.m. on a Monday. Like,
No way.
yeah, it was scary. Like, I look
It's
back on it
gnarly.
now and it gives me chills. Like then I would just I did like there was no association what happened. They tried to rob me and I told them no. Like, nope,
Wow.
not happening. And I got, yeah, and so that happened and I knew like not many people were wanting to deal with me anymore. I
Sure.
was a hazard. And
Had your parents kind of checked out at that point?
they finally were like,
They're like, good
I
luck.
was in jail up like because I was going in and out of rehab. Like I did rehab once and I was doing like halfway houses up in Phoenix and it just wasn't working. And I was always trying to look for a solution to get off it. Like always I would go do my own thing. I moved out to Hawaii for like right when I graduated and was able to stay sober out there for like 9 months, just working on the beach, like working on some boats out there.
Nature.
Yeah, and so, but then I came back, and then I would do like I went to Durango and did like the Southwest Conservation Corps, and like was trained to be a wildland firefighter, and I would always do these things, but I would always get pulled back in because I had no like real support system. I was just trying to do it myself, and
Sure.
so what happened in Tucson, I finally my dad was actually moving to New Orleans, and so I thought it was a good opportunity. I was like, well, I'll go get sober in New Orleans, and it was like right when the BP oil spill happened, and so I was like, I'll get a job helping to clean up somewhere because I'd always rely on like manual labor or something like that. But then I got to New Orleans, and I just fell in love with New Orleans, and I'm like, I'm not going to clean up oil. I'm gonna go like wait tables in the French
Yeah.
Quarter, and yeah,
Mhm.
and so I was able to get off the drugs, but then I just started drinking there. It was like the culture,
Totally.
and so I was just like bartending up and down on Bourbon Street, and then eventually, like after a few years of that, that really played out, and I was like, okay, I was in my like young 20s, and I was like, it's fun, but like I can't continue doing this forever. And so at
Sure.
that point, I left um, New Orleans, and I flew out with a friend of mine, and we went and backpacked the West Coast. Um, one summer, like started in Southern California, wound up in Washington. Looked like it was a good experience, and then got up to Washington, and we were out of money, and so I wound up in the oil field in North Dakota.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Where at in North Dakota?
Williston, North Dakota.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that for a couple.
Rough.
Yeah, it was so bad.
So rough.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was bad. But I was able to I did that for because my plan when I left New Orleans, like a friend of mine, she was living in Keystone, and I saw her in Tucson. She was like, "You'll love Summit County. You got to get up to Summit County." And so that was my plan. But my friend, we decided to go to California instead. So I was able to save up a little bit of money from the oil field, and then that winter, my brother was moving to Breckenridge, so I went down there to Breckenridge, and
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
Colorado's a good place.
It is.
it's a pretty rad
I
place.
love Colorado. I do think the drinking culture is in really in your face, which is fine, whatever. But I think overall people here are really healthy. But it's
Oh yeah.
just the mountains and the nature, and I don't know. I love Breckenridge. It's like Breckenridge and Steamboat are my two favorite mountain towns in Colorado. They're more laid back. I feel like less whatever the word I want to not use there.
Uppity.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Breckenridge definitely got a good like a live community.
There's a lot of transplants here in Colorado. I'm always
Mhm.
curious what brings people here
Sure.
eventually. And my friend Allie, who you know Allie, we
Mhm.
all know Allie,
Mhm.
says that there's the crystal grid that lies beneath the surface of the earth. And on the crystal grid, there's like ley lines, and where the ley lines intersect is like high energy points, and it draws people to those areas because they like vibrationally feel like calming or powerful or whatever. And she said that like Fort Collins and like the Front Range kind of lies on one of those intersections of the
I
ley
believe that.
lines. Yeah. So I definitely feel like people are drawn here. I think Costa Rica's on one. Peru's
Machu
probably on
Picchu,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was when I left the jungle. I met I stayed at this hostel that a friend recommended, and I ended up meeting this guy, and I was looking to do like a guided hike to Machu
Oh
Picchu.
yeah.
but it was like $1,000 last minute. And
Whoa.
so I met this guy, and he was like looking to do it Renegade, and so it like worked out perfect. And then we ended up hiking the Salcantay Trek. It's like a 5-day
Ooh.
hike to Machu Picchu, and it was definitely the same thing. Like the town at the base of Machu Picchu, Aguas Calientes, like the energy there, you could see it in the people around. Like you could feel it. It was definitely like uh, very like yeah, calming and alive. It was good.
Draws you.
Yeah,
I mean, nature is the medicine.
Yeah.
You know,
it is.
it 100%
The
is.
music, yoga,
Music,
moving,
yoga,
breathing,
all the good
Mhm.
things. We're so
eating
lucky to
healthy.
be humans in
Yeah.
this experience and all
It's
the
true.
things we get to have. So tell us what role yoga plays in your life right now.
Right now, I am um, doing hot 2 days a week. From last year, I was doing it a lot, and I
Yeah.
think at this point in my life, I'm pulling back a little bit.
It's maintenance.
Yeah, well, not I wouldn't say maintenance. Like, yeah, I definitely, I like to show up a little early and like just breathe before, and then I try to stay afterwards, like at least like
Mhm.
10-15 minutes, and try to like I like to meditate after yoga.
Mhm.
There's something about like my body being exhausted where I can connect very well like after it.
Mhm.
So I do like that concept. Right now where I'm at, like the 2 hot classes a week is like perfect. I do want to start doing Ashtanga, and I hope to be doing that soon. Um,
Sweet.
Yeah,
Tell me what
that's
days
great.
you want to
Yeah,
go.
right?
I'll meet you there.
I'll look at the
We'll
schedule
go.
and
How about
figure it out.
Sunday?
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm
Nice.
you know, I always want to always continue being at least a couple classes a week
Yeah.
Yeah.
doing it. But
It's something that's really, I think, so important to keep in our lives. Like, we're always going to discover other methods of self discovery and all of that. But man, yoga is the shit.
Yeah.
Yoga's all the things.
Yeah, it is.
So, what's next for
Awesome.
you?
well, where I am presently, so I do have my a painting business, which um
Which we'll put the website. It's Noble Painting.
yeah, it's going very well. I love the aspect is I've been able to connect with the community, which I love that a lot. I have plans to go to music school in Boulder to learn. So I rap, but
Yeah.
my producing skills aren't that hot. Like, and so I want to just be able to produce and make all my music. And so I've been using Ableton the past couple years and just self-teaching myself off, YouTube University and just messing around with it. And so I'm looking, there's a program there, they're like a certified Ableton instructing course, like 6 months. So I plan to go to that this June while, still doing Noble Painting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so that's kind of where I'm at right now is focusing Noble Painting, music, and then I'm in an amazing relationship with my girlfriend, and she's down in the tech center. She's took a job down there, so we're kind of looking to um, what part of Colorado we want to be in. We're
Yeah.
not quite sure if it's Northern Colorado, Boulder, Denver, where it's at, but we're kind of figuring that out this next
Well,
year.
there's so
Exciting time of
so
life.
many
It
good
really is.
options.
Lots to be
Exciting time
grateful
of life.
for.
Exciting
Oh,
time of life.
so
That's fun.
neat.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good.
Awesome. And thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for listening. If you like this, rate, review us. Let us know how we're doing. Share it with your friends. And we'll be back here next week. Same
Yay.
time.
Thanks, Peter.
Same place.
Perfect.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
See you. Bye. What was